My name is Olivia Bennett. I am 32 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my own mother looked me straight in the eyes and told me something no daughter should ever hear. Olivia, for Ethan's sake, you need to stay dead. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. You see, my younger brother had just become engaged to the daughter of one of Chicago's wealthiest families. And apparently, having a sister who managed cleaning operations in a luxury skyscraper was too embarrassing for their new billionaire relatives. So my family solved the problem, the only way they knew how. They erased me. But before I tell you how my family buried me alive and how their entire empire of lies collapsed on the day of the wedding, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. To understand how things reach that point, you need to understand my family. Growing up, there were always two sets of rules in the Bennett household. One for Ethan, and one for me. Ethan was younger than me by 3 years, but from the day he was born, he became the center of my mother's universe. My mother, Victoria Bennett, adored appearances. She cared deeply about what neighbors thought, what church friends whispered, and what social circles considered respectable. When my father was alive, things weren't perfect, but they were stable. Dad owned a small manufacturing business on the outskirts of Chicago. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. Then, when I was 21 and Ethan was 18, everything changed. My father suffered a sudden heart attack. He died before the ambulance reached the hospital. The loss shattered all of us. But while I grieved, my mother became obsessed with one thing: restoring the lifestyle she believed had been stolen from us. The business struggled without Dad. Bills piled up. Loans went unpaid. Someone had to step up. That someone was me. I dropped out of graduate school during my second semester and took the first full-time job I could find. It was a night cleaning position at Vance Tower, one of the most prestigious commercial buildings in downtown Chicago. At first, I was embarrassed. I had dreamed of becoming an architect. Instead, I spent nights emptying trash bins, vacuuming executive offices, and polishing marble floors. But I quickly learned something important. There is dignity in honest work. No job is shameful if it puts food on the table. I worked 12-hour shifts. I attended management courses during the day. I rarely slept more than 4 hours. Slowly, I climbed. Senior cleaner, shift supervisor, operations coordinator, assistant manager, then finally, head of facilities and cleaning operations. By 32, I supervised 25 employees and managed the daily operations of a 90-story luxury skyscraper. I was proud of myself. Unfortunately, my mother never was. Whenever anyone asked what I did for a living, she would hesitate. "Oh, Olivia works downtown," she'd say vaguely. She never once mentioned my title. Never once. Yet every month, she accepted the money I sent to help with mortgage payments. Every month. And Ethan? Ethan chased dreams. Expensive dreams. Private business school. Luxury apartments. Sports cars. Designer clothes. When he accumulated nearly $40,000 in credit card debt at 24, guess who paid it?
Me.
When he needed money for tuition after wasting his savings.
Me.
When he wanted startup capital for a failed online business.
Again me.
I sacrificed vacations, relationships, and my own future so my family could survive. I thought that's what families did. I was wrong. Everything changed on a cold October evening. My mother called unexpectedly. "Ethan's engaged," she announced. I smiled immediately. Despite our complicated relationship, I genuinely loved my brother. "That's wonderful," I said. "Who's the lucky woman?" "Her name is Isabella Sterling." I nearly dropped my phone. Sterling. As in Charles Sterling. Chicago real estate billionaire Charles Sterling. Owner of Sterling Properties. Owner of Vance Tower. Owner of the very building where I worked. I couldn't believe it. Apparently, Ethan had met Isabella at a charity gala nearly a year earlier. Within months, they had fallen in love. Or at least, that's what everyone claimed. My mother invited me to the house the following evening to celebrate. I stopped by an upscale bakery after work and purchased a beautiful custom cake. I also bought Isabella an elegant crystal picture frame engraved with the words "Family is forever." The irony still makes me laugh. When I arrived, the front door was partially open. Voices drifted from inside. I recognized my mother's voice immediately. "The Sterling family is everything we've dreamed of," she said excitedly. "This marriage changes everything." Then Ethan spoke. "We can't let Olivia ruin it." I froze. My hand tightened around the gift bag. My mother sighed. "I know. I should have walked away." Instead, I stepped inside. Conversation stopped instantly. The atmosphere shifted. Ethan looked irritated. My mother looked nervous. "Congratulations," I said, forcing a smile. I held out the gifts. Neither of them moved. After several uncomfortable seconds, Ethan finally took them, without thanks. I sat down. "So," I asked, "when's the wedding?" 3 weeks, Ethan replied. "That's exciting. I haven't received my invitation yet."
Silence. Long.
Terrible. Silence. My stomach sank. Ethan exchanged a look with my mother. Finally, she spoke. "Olivia, there's something we need to discuss." Every instinct told me I wasn't going to like what came next. The Sterling family belongs to a very traditional social circle. My mother began carefully. I frowned. "Okay. They have certain expectations." I still didn't understand. Then Ethan stood. "Look, Olivia, don't make this difficult." I stared. "Make what difficult?" He exhaled dramatically. "We don't want you at the wedding." For a moment, I honestly thought I had misheard. "What?" He crossed his arms. "I don't want people knowing my sister works as a cleaner." The words struck like physical blows. "I'm not just a cleaner," I said quietly. "I'm head of operations." Ethan laughed. "A title doesn't change what you do." I looked at my mother, expecting outrage. Instead, she avoided my eyes. "Mom." She adjusted her pearl necklace nervously. "Olivia, we've already explained your absence to the Sterlings." Something cold settled in my chest. "What does that mean?" Neither answered immediately. Finally, Ethan said it. "We told them you died." The room spun. "What?" "We said you were killed in a car accident 10 years ago." I couldn't breathe.
My own family.
My own flesh and blood had declared me dead. To impress rich people. "It's better this way," my mother whispered. I stared at her. Better? Better for whom? Tears blurred my vision. "You told people I was dead? Please understand," she pleaded weakly. "The Sterlings are influential people. We couldn't risk questions about your profession." I looked from my mother to my brother. Neither seemed ashamed. Not really. They looked inconvenienced, as if my pain represented a minor scheduling conflict. "All these years," I whispered, "everything I've done for this family." Ethan rolled his eyes. "Don't be dramatic."
Dramatic.
I had sacrificed my education, my savings, my dreams, and now I was dramatic. I slowly stood. "You're ashamed of me?" Ethan shrugged. "I'm protecting my future." I looked at my mother one final time. She didn't stop me, didn't apologize,
Didn't defend me.
I walked out. Neither followed. Outside, rain had begun falling. I sat inside my car for nearly an hour, crying harder than I had cried even when my father died. Because grief is different when the people killing you are still alive. And in that moment, I realized something devastating. I had spent 10 years trying to earn love that was never unconditional. I just didn't know yet that their betrayal was about to destroy everything they had spent years building. The days following my family's betrayal passed in a haze. I went to work. I came home. I slept. Then I repeated the cycle all over again. But no matter how hard I tried to distract myself, I couldn't erase my mother's words from my mind. "It's better this way." Better. As though my existence was some embarrassing stain that needed to be scrubbed away. Ironically, I had spent the last decade making a living by cleaning up other people's messes. Yet somehow, in my family's eyes, I had become the mess. For the first time in years, I stopped sending money to my mother. I canceled the automatic transfers from my bank account. I told myself it was temporary, that I needed time. Deep down, however, I knew something fundamental had changed. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Ethan. I let it go to voicemail. Then my mother called. I ignored her too. By evening, They had each called 6 times. Finally, a text message arrived. Please answer. This is important. Against my better judgment, I called. My mother answered immediately. Olivia, thank goodness, she said. I remained silent. We need to talk. We already talked. Please don't be difficult. I almost laughed. Difficult. That word again. When your family tells billionaires you're dead, I think they lose the right to call you difficult. There was a long pause. Then she said something that stunned me. Ethan and I are coming over tomorrow. I don't think that's a good idea. We're coming, she repeated before hanging up. The next evening, precisely at 6 o'clock, my apartment doorbell rang. I opened the door to find my mother and Ethan standing there. Both were impeccably dressed. My mother wore an expensive cream-colored designer suit. Ethan was wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Neither looked particularly uncomfortable. If anything, they appeared annoyed. Ethan walked inside without waiting for an invitation. His eyes immediately began scanning my apartment. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom condominium overlooking Lake Michigan. It wasn't luxurious, but it was warm, spotless, and entirely mine. Every piece of furniture had been purchased with money I had earned honestly. Still living here? Ethan asked dismissively. I folded my arms. Yes. My mother's gaze settled on the framed certificates displayed on my living room wall. Employee Excellence Award. Outstanding Leadership Recognition. 10 years of distinguished service. Her lips tightened. You really display these? I stared at her. I'm proud of them. Ethan chuckled. You know, Olivia, that's your problem. My problem. You're proud of small things. I looked at him in disbelief. Excuse me? He shrugged. You've never understood ambition. The irony was breathtaking. I had worked myself nearly into exhaustion for 10 years. Meanwhile, Ethan had never kept a job longer than 18 months. Why are you here? I asked. My mother exchanged a glance with Ethan. We need your cooperation. I felt my stomach knot. Cooperation with what? The wedding weekend. I said nothing. My mother continued. There will be several events downtown. Rehearsal dinners, receptions, charity functions. So, Ethan interrupted impatiently. We need you to stay away from downtown for the entire week. I blinked. What? The Sterlings have extensive social connections. Someone could see you. I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. You expect me to disappear from the city because you're pretending I'm dead? Just for a week, my mother said. I stared at her. You're serious? Olivia, please understand the stakes. No, I said quietly. You explain the stakes to me. Ethan sighed dramatically. If this marriage goes well, the Sterlings intend to invest heavily in Mom's company. My mother nodded eagerly. Charles Sterling has discussed a potential partnership worth several $1 million. Everything suddenly made sense. This wasn't about love. It wasn't even about status. It was about money. Again, you sold me for an investment. My mother's face hardened. Don't be ridiculous. No, I replied. What's ridiculous is standing in my home asking me to pretend I don't exist. Ethan crossed his arms. You're being selfish. That word ignited something inside me. Selfish. I repeated. I pointed directly at him. When Dad died, who dropped out of graduate school? Silence. Who paid your tuition? No answer. Who cleared your debt? Neither spoke. Who sent money every single month so Mom could keep the house? My voice cracked. I gave everything to this family. Ethan looked away. My mother sighed. Nobody asked you to do that. The sentence hit harder than everything else. Nobody asked you. 10 years of sacrifice. Dismissed in 4 words. Something inside me finally broke. Or perhaps it healed. I walked to the front door and opened it. You need to leave. My mother's expression darkened. Olivia. Leave. Ethan scoffed.
Fine.
But if you ruin this wedding, don't expect us to ever speak to you again. I met his gaze. You already buried me, Ethan. What exactly do I have left to lose? Neither answered. They left moments later. I never imagined those would be the last words we would exchange before their world collapsed. The following Tuesday began like every other day. I arrived at Vance Tower at 5:15 a.m. The 90-story skyscraper was one of Chicago's architectural masterpieces. Housing corporate headquarters, private investment firms, and executive suites, the building represented billions of dollars in assets. As head of facilities operations, I was responsible for ensuring everything functioned flawlessly. Most mornings were routine. That morning was not. At exactly 5:47 a.m., my radio exploded with frantic voices. Emergency on floor 40. Major water leak. Immediate response required. I sprinted toward the elevators. When the doors opened on the 40th floor, chaos greeted me. Water poured from the ceiling. Employees rushed frantically through flooded hallways. Several inches of water already covered the expensive hardwood flooring. My heart nearly stopped. The 40th floor housed Sterling Properties executive boardrooms. Antique furniture. Custom artwork. Sensitive electronic systems. Millions of dollars were at risk. Everyone listen, I shouted. Instantly, my team focused. Years of leadership had taught them to trust me during emergencies. Team 1, shut down power to the eastern corridor. Team 2, begin water extraction. Maintenance, locate the burst pipe immediately. Within minutes, organized chaos replaced panic. For 4 exhausting hours, we fought the flooding. We moved priceless furniture, protected electronics, extracted thousands of gallons of water, directed restoration specialists. By 10 o'clock, the impossible had happened. The executive floor looked untouched. No damage. No permanent losses. No evidence that disaster had ever occurred. Exhausted and soaked, I was wiping down the final conference table when a deep voice spoke behind me. Remarkable. I turned. Standing in the doorway was Charles Sterling himself, the billionaire owner of Sterling Properties. Beside him stood his eldest son, Daniel. Several executives hovered nearby. Everyone looked stunned. Charles Sterling was exactly as newspapers described.
Tall.
Distinguished. Commanding. But it was his eyes that struck me. Sharp. Observant. Intelligent. He surveyed the immaculate boardroom. My executives informed me this floor was underwater 4 hours ago. It was, I replied. He looked genuinely impressed. And now, it's operational. One executive quickly stepped forward. Our management team coordinated. Charles silenced him with a glance. I wasn't speaking to you. He turned back to me. Your name? Olivia Bennett, head of facilities operations. He extended his hand. Charles Sterling. I shook it. He didn't hesitate despite my damp work gloves. That simple gesture surprised me. Many executives wouldn't have done the same. You saved us millions today, Ms. Bennett. Just doing my job, sir. He smiled slightly. People who simply do their jobs rarely produce results like this. Then something unexpected happened. Charles asked everyone else to leave. When we were alone, he sat at the conference table. My grandfather worked in an automobile factory, he said. He spent 30 years on an assembly line. I listened quietly. He taught me that there is no dishonorable work, only dishonorable people. Those words struck me deeply, because they represented everything my family refused to understand. Then Charles casually asked a question that made my blood run cold. Tell me, Ms. Bennett, are you related to Victoria and Ethan Bennett by any chance? My heart stopped. I forced myself to remain calm. Why do you ask? Charles smiled. My daughter Isabella is marrying Ethan this weekend. He paused. Ethan mentioned having an older sister who tragically died years ago. I couldn't breathe. Charles continued. Family means everything to us. It's unfortunate she won't be there. I lowered my eyes. Yes, I whispered softly. Very unfortunate. But when I looked back up, I noticed something unsettling. Charles Sterling was studying me carefully, very carefully, as though he had just discovered a puzzle that didn't quite fit. And Charles Sterling was not a man who ignored puzzles. For the rest of that Tuesday, I couldn't concentrate. No matter how hard I tried, I kept replaying my conversation with Charles Sterling in my mind. There had been something in his expression when he mentioned Ethan. suspicion,
Curiosity.
recognition. And I couldn't blame him. Ethan and I looked remarkably alike. We had inherited the same dark hair, the same blue eyes, and the same sharp jawline from our father. Anyone paying close attention would immediately notice the resemblance, especially a man as observant as Charles Sterling. By the time I returned home that evening, exhaustion had settled deep into my bones. But sleep never came. Instead, I sat on my balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline, wrapped in a blanket and holding a mug of untouched tea. My phone remained silent. No calls from my mother. No messages from Ethan. For the first time in years, I felt strangely free. The following morning, something unusual happened. My assistant supervisor, Linda, knocked on my office door. "Olivia," she said carefully, "there are two gentlemen here asking for you." I frowned. "Who are they?" "They said they work for Sterling Corporate Security." My stomach immediately tightened. "Send them in." A moment later, two professionally dressed men entered my office. Both introduced themselves politely. "Ms. Bennett, we're conducting a routine background verification for Sterling Enterprises." I forced a calm smile. "Regarding what exactly?" "Mr. Sterling requested additional information concerning several individuals connected to upcoming family business agreements." I understood immediately. Charles was investigating. The security officers asked simple questions. How long had I worked at Vance Tower? Where had I attended school? Who were my immediate family members? I answered honestly. There was no reason not to. When one investigator asked whether I was related to Ethan Bennett, I simply replied, "He's my younger brother." The man paused. Interesting. That single word told me everything. Charles Sterling already knew. Or, at least suspected. By Thursday afternoon, I had accepted the inevitable. The truth was going to surface. The only question was when.
And how.
Friday arrived. Wedding rehearsals had begun across the city. Meanwhile, I buried myself in work. Around noon, my office phone rang. It was my mother. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello." "Olivia," she said immediately, sounding anxious. "Has anyone contacted you?" I hesitated. "Why?" "Just answer the question." "Yes." Silence. Then I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Who?" "Corporate security." The line went completely silent. Finally, she whispered, "Oh, God." I had never heard genuine fear in my mother's voice before. "Mom, what's happening?" "Ethan says Charles Sterling has been asking questions." I closed my eyes. "I see. Listen to me carefully," she said urgently. "If anyone asks, you and Ethan haven't spoken in years." I almost laughed. "You still expect me to lie for you? Olivia, please."
No.
"You're going to destroy this family." My voice became very calm.
No, Mom.
"You already did that." I ended the call. She never called back. Saturday morning arrived beneath a blanket of gray clouds. The wedding day. I had intentionally taken the weekend off months earlier. Originally, I had imagined attending my brother's wedding. I had even purchased a beautiful navy blue silk gown for the occasion. Now the dress hung untouched inside my closet. At least, that had been my plan. At exactly 11 o'clock that morning, my phone began ringing. "Tyler." Ignore. 30 seconds later, it rang again. "Victoria." Ignore. Then again.
And again.
Within 15 minutes, my phone had recorded 27 missed calls. Text messages flooded my screen. "Please answer. It's an emergency. Call US immediately. Olivia, please." Then came a voicemail from Ethan. He was crying. Actually crying. I had never heard my brother cry as an adult. With trembling hands, I played the message. "Olivia, please answer. Everything's ruined. Charles knows. He knows everything. Please come to the Fairmont Hotel. Please. You're the only one who can fix this." My heart pounded. Charles knew. Completely. The phone rang again.
Ethan.
This time, I answered. The moment the line connected, hysterical sobbing filled my apartment. "Olivia." "Thank God." "What happened?" There was chaos in the background. People shouting. Someone crying. "Ethan?" Charles confronted us, he gasped. He hired investigators. They found everything. I remained silent. He canceled the ceremony. What? He says unless you come and explain everything personally, the wedding is over. I stood motionless. You need me? Please, Ethan begged. Please save us. I looked out across Lake Michigan. Just days earlier, I had been too embarrassing to acknowledge, too shameful to attend the wedding, too common to exist. Now they needed me, the dead sister. I thought carefully. Then I walked toward my bedroom. Text me the address, I said. An hour later, I stepped out of a black town car in front of Chicago's magnificent Fairmont Hotel. I wore the navy blue silk dress I had originally purchased for Ethan's wedding. My hair was elegantly styled. My makeup was simple, professional, confident. For the first time in days, I felt completely calm. I wasn't there to save anyone. I was there to reclaim my name. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Guests clustered in anxious groups throughout the marble lobby. Whispers echoed everywhere. Apparently, there was some kind of scandal. I heard the groom lied. Charles Sterling is furious. Security personnel guarded the ballroom entrance. As soon as I entered, conversation stopped. Every eye turned toward me. I ignored them. The grand ballroom looked breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers illuminated thousands of white roses. An orchestra sat silently in one corner. Elegant place settings remained untouched. But the atmosphere was anything but beautiful. At the center of the room stood the Sterling family. Charles Sterling, his daughter Isabella, his son Daniel, several attorneys, corporate executives. And, directly opposite them stood my family. My mother looked as though she had aged 10 years overnight. Ethan's expensive tuxedo was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. The moment they saw me, both rushed forward. Olivia, my mother cried. She grabbed my hands desperately. Thank God you're here. I gently removed her hands. Why am I here, Mom? I thought I died 10 years ago. Tears streamed down her face. Please don't do this. Ethan stepped closer. Olivia, just tell Charles there was a misunderstanding. I stared at him. A misunderstanding? Please, he whispered. Anything. Say we were estranged. Say you lived overseas. Say. I won't lie. Panic flashed across his face. My mother lowered her voice. If you help us, we'll make things right.
How?
We'll share the investment money. I actually laughed. Even now, even after everything, they still thought this was about money. Without another word, I walked past them, straight toward Charles Sterling. The billionaire watched me approach with unreadable eyes. When I stopped in front of him, the entire ballroom fell silent. Mr. Sterling, I said quietly. He nodded. Ms. Bennett, I believe you wanted to speak with me. Charles studied me for several long seconds. Then he asked one simple question. Are Victoria and Ethan Bennett your family? I looked directly at my mother, at my brother, then back at Charles. Yes. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Charles closed his eyes briefly, as though confirming something he had desperately hoped wasn't true. When he opened them again, they were cold. Would you care to explain why your family informed us that you died 10 years ago? I slowly reached into my purse. I think this will explain everything. I removed my phone, opened the audio recordings, and pressed play. My mother's voice echoed throughout the silent ballroom. Olivia, you're embarrassing this family. We've told the Sterlings you died. Stay away from the wedding. Then Ethan's voice. I don't want billionaires knowing my sister cleans floors. Silence. Absolute silence. The recording ended. No one moved. No one spoke. Then Isabella Sterling slowly removed her engagement ring. She looked directly at Ethan. I don't even know who you are, she whispered. And with that, she placed the ring in his trembling hand. The wedding was over, but the real consequences had only just begun. The silence after Isabella removed her ring was heavier than anything I had ever experienced. It didn't feel like a wedding anymore. It felt like a courtroom, and I was no longer on trial. My mother stood frozen near the floral arch, her hands trembling so violently that her bracelets clinked together like broken glass. Ethan looked completely hollow, as though someone had drained every drop of confidence he had ever faked. But the most important gaze in the room belonged to Charles Sterling.
He was still watching me, carefully.
Quietly, not with anger, not with pity, but with calculation. Finally, he spoke. "Before I make any decisions," Charles said, his voice carrying across the ballroom, "I want absolute clarity." He turned slightly toward my mother and Ethan. "Did you, or did you not, tell my family that your daughter was deceased?" My mother opened her mouth. No sound came out. Ethan tried instead. We had no choice." Charles raised one hand. "Answer the question." A long, suffocating pause followed. Then my mother whispered, "Yes." That single word collapsed everything. Charles didn't react immediately. He simply nodded, as though confirming a final piece of data in a business report. Then he turned to me. "And you are very much alive." "Yes," I said quietly. A murmur rippled through the guests. Charles exhaled slowly. "When I first met you at Vance Tower, I noticed something unusual," he said. "Your discipline, your leadership, your ability to control chaos without hesitation." He paused. "People like that do not come from dishonest environments." My mother flinched. Ethan looked like he might be sick. Charles continued, "But I did not expect this level of deception." He turned fully toward my family now. "Do you understand what you have done?" My mother stepped forward quickly. "Mr. Sterling, please, it was a misunderstanding. Social pressure. Ethan's future." Charles's voice cut through hers like steel. "You lied to a billion-dollar organization about the death of a family member to manipulate a marriage alliance." The room went silent again. "That is not a misunderstanding," he said. "That is fraud." Ethan suddenly panicked. "Sir, please, if you cancel the marriage, everything falls apart. My career, our company." Charles looked at him coldly. "Your career?" He gave a small, humorless laugh. "You don't have a career. You had an opportunity, and you used it to erase your own sister." Ethan froze. Charles turned slightly toward his legal team. "Prepare termination of all pending agreements between the Bennett family holdings and Sterling Enterprises." A lawyer immediately nodded. My mother staggered backward. "No, please. Those contracts are the only thing keeping us afloat." Charles didn't even look at her. They were contingent on honesty. He then turned back to me. For the first time, his expression softened slightly. "Miss Bennett," he said, "I owe you an apology." I blinked. "For what?" "For not recognizing sooner that the most valuable person in your family was the one they tried to erase." The words hit harder than I expected. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Charles continued, "My daughter will not be marrying into a family built on deception." He looked at Isabella, who nodded silently in agreement. Then he addressed the entire ballroom. "This wedding is officially canceled." A collective gasp filled the room. But he wasn't finished. "Furthermore," Charles added, "any future dealings with the Bennett family or their affiliated companies will be terminated effective immediately." That was the moment everything truly collapsed. My mother made a strangled sound. Ethan grabbed a chair to steady himself. But Charles finally stepped closer to me, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "There is something else I want to discuss with you privately." I looked at him cautiously. "What kind of discussion?" He studied me for a moment. "Your future." The word felt unfamiliar. My future had always been something I built alone, slowly, quietly, without recognition. Charles continued, "I want you to consider a position within Sterling Enterprises." I blinked. "I clean buildings." "You manage operations," he corrected. "You lead people. You solve problems. You save assets worth millions without hesitation." He paused. "We don't need more executives who inherited power. We need people who understand responsibility." I felt something shift inside me. Years of dismissal. Years of being invisible. Years of being reduced to a label I never accepted. Charles extended his hand. "Executive Director of Facilities and Infrastructure Management. Nationwide." The ballroom went silent again. Even my mother stopped breathing. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked back at the people who had once defined my entire existence. My mother's eyes were filled with panic. Ethan looked broken beyond recognition. Neither of them spoke. For once, they had nothing left to say. I turned back to Charles. "I accept," I said simply. A quiet nod. No celebration. No applause. Just a decision that felt like stepping into air I had never been allowed to breathe before. 6 months later, I stood inside my new office on the top floor of Sterling Enterprises headquarters. Glass walls stretched from floor to ceiling, overlooking the entire Chicago skyline. My nameplate read, Olivia Bennett, Executive Director, Infrastructure Operations. I no longer walked through buildings unseen. I led them. I no longer cleaned behind other people's success. I built systems that supported thousands of employees like the version of me I used to be. And every single day, I made one rule non-negotiable. No worker was ever invisible. No job was ever beneath respect. As for my family, the consequences were irreversible. My mother lost every major investment deal tied to Sterling Enterprises. The company she had once called her salvation plan collapsed within months. Last I heard, she had moved into a small rented apartment on the outskirts of the city, far from the social circles she once worshipped. Ethan? He disappeared from corporate circles entirely. Last report I saw placed him in entry-level manual labor, working rotating shifts for a logistics contractor, doing the very work he once mocked as low class. Neither of them contacted me again. And I didn't contact them. Because some betrayals don't need closure. They need distance. One evening, as the sun set over Chicago, Charles joined me in the office overlooking the skyline. "You ever regret any of it?" he asked. I thought for a moment. "No," I said honestly. He nodded. "Good answer." We stood in silence for a while. Then I said something I had carried for years. "Do you know what hurt the most?" Charles didn't interrupt. "That they didn't just lie," I continued. "They erased me like I was nothing."
He looked at me.
And now, I looked out at the city. Now they remember me every time they build something I helped design. A quiet understanding passed between us. Not revenge, not bitterness, just consequence. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.